want an example? Do you want an example?
Yes.
The ludicrous, outrageous criticisms of Joe Rogan around ivermectin, deliberately referring to it as a horse medicine when they know it's an effective medicine.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Rachel
example.
Maddow turning up on the TV saying, if you take this vaccine, you're not going to get it, when it hadn't been clinically trialed for transmission.
Non-responsive.
You have to listen.
Wait.
Do you think you can improve America by determinedly and avowedly condemning Fox News without acknowledging that you're participating in the same?
Russell Brand has called out MSNBC for what he believes is clear, one-sided reporting. The bold comedian and actor didn't hesitate to claim that the network shaped stories to push its own plans. During his appearance on Bill Maher's show, Brand clashed with an MSNBC guest, sparking a fiery exchange. Voices rose, tempers flared, and the discussion quickly turned into a full-on confrontation. Things escalated in moments, so get ready because this one heats up fast.
Disingenuous to claim that the biases that are exhibited on Fox News are any different from the biases exhibited on MSNBC. It's difficult to suggest that these corporations operate as anything other than mouthpieces for their affiliate owners in BlackRock and Vanguard. And unless we start to embrace, and also, mate, like just spiritually, if I may use that word in your great country, we have to take responsibility for our own perspective. I've been on that MSNBC, mate. It was propagandist nut.
Russell Brand argues that MSNBC has drifted away from genuine journalism and now works to advance political and business interests tied to its wealthy supporters. He says the network acts more like a promotional outlet than a true source of information, shaping stories to fit a preferred narrative rather than helping Americans understand important issues. Brand believes this includes using flashy angles and selective storytelling to weaken Donald Trump, which he sees as part of a larger pattern in mainstream media, one that turns news into spectacle, repeats the same viewpoints, limits open criticism, and ultimately pushes people further apart.
A show called Morning Joe. It was absurd the way they carried on.
Good Morning Joe.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It wasn't morning. There was no one called Joe there. No one could concentrate. They didn't understand the basic tenets of journalism. No one was willing to stick up for genuine American heroes like Edward Snowden. No one was willing to talk about Julian Assange and what he's suffered trying to bring real journalism to the American people. And
millions of Americans who have lost trust in major news outlets now look to independent voices like Joe Rogan for what they believe is honest and fair reporting, reflecting Russell Brand's frustration. Many people feel worn out by the polished storytelling, political messaging, and selective outrage they associate with traditional networks. Instead, they want open conversations, sincere viewpoints, and a level of clarity they feel big media rarely provides. Brand says this shift is happening because more individuals realize that channels such as CNN and MSNBC often place political and corporate interests above the public good. In contrast, independent podcasts offer space to discuss tough issues and explore different perspectives, which many see as more genuine, more relatable, and much closer to the free speech values that traditional media once claimed to uphold.
To sit within the castle of MSNBC throwing rocks at Fox News is ludicrous.
My friend.
Make MSNBC better. Make MSNBC great again.
My friend, I would. The moment.
Fight them on a territory you can win on, Joe.
Russell, darling. The moment that you give me a specific example, an actual example.
Okay, I'll give you one.
Just wait.
Wait.
It's not about bias. It's a false equivalency because you don't actually know anything about any of these organizations you're talking about. Even on MSNBC once, big deal.
My darling, it was more than enough.
You can't come out with such a carry. You have a single actual fact.
According to Russell Brand, the problem is that major networks behave exactly as he describes, yet act surprised when confronted and demand specific examples. Even though he believes there are countless ones, he points to well-known hosts who, in his view, openly support the Democratic National Committee and show clear bias through their tone, framing, and selective coverage, even when they try to appear balanced. Brand argues that this becomes obvious through the questions they ask, the guests they choose, and the topics they avoid, making it feel organized rather than subtle. He goes further, saying that some outlets present themselves as guardians of truth while promoting narratives that favor one political side, which he sees as advocacy disguised as journalism. In his opinion, more Americans are beginning to recognize this pattern and question the credibility of these networks.
Want an example? Do you want an example?
Yes.
The ludicrous, outrageous criticisms of Joe Rogan around ivermectin, deliberately referring to it as a horse medicine when they know it's an effective medicine.
Yeah, that's not a bad
Rachel
example.
Maddow turning up on the TV saying if you take this vaccine, you're not going to get it when it hadn't been clinically trialed for transmission.
Non-responsive.
You have to listen.
Wait.
Do you think you
Not
can
a
improve
response.
America by
think we could all
determinedly
be
and
better.
avowedly condemning Fox News without acknowledging that you're participating in the
According to Russell Brand, the problem with certain major news outlets is that they behave exactly as he describes. When challenged, he says they act as if the evidence isn't right in front of everyone and insist on being shown a specific example, even though he believes there are countless ones. Brand argues that several well-known hosts have openly supported the Democratic National Committee, and he claims their bias shows through in the tone they use, the guests they select, the questions they ask, and the stories they avoid. To him, this pattern isn't subtle at all, it's intentional. He also points to what he views as one-sided storytelling disguised as truth-seeking, something he says Americans are beginning to notice. As an illustration, Brand brings up Joe Rogan's situation, asserting that Rachel Maddow wrongly suggested Rogan took horse medicine, even though, according to Brand, Rogan was given a doctor-prescribed medication used for humans. Brand believes this was not a simple mistake, but a deliberate attempt to undermine a critic and reinforce the network's preferred storyline. He argues that accusing others of spreading false information while presenting misleading narratives themselves reveals a deeper hypocrisy, and claims that Maddow's reporting demonstrates why many people have lost confidence in mainstream media.
Not just listen to Bernie Sanders, someone who plainly, legitimately believes in this country and believes it's possible to change, but is bound by corruption, is bound by the lobbying system.
Russell Brand argues that major news outlets often dismiss obvious concerns and act as though critics must prove what he believes is already plain to see, pointing to what he views as countless examples of political favoritism. He says well-known hosts openly support the Democratic Party and show bias through their tone, their story choices, and the guests they feature, even while presenting themselves as neutral. To Brand, this creates a system that favors one side and presents advocacy as journalism, something he believes Americans are beginning to notice. He also raises the case involving Joe Rogan, saying Rachel Maddow's comments about Rogan using horse medicine ignored the fact that a doctor had prescribed a human-approved version of the medication. Brand sees this as a purposeful attempt to undermine a critic rather than an honest mistake, and he argues that accusing others of misinformation while using exaggerated framing reveals a deeper problem in some mainstream reporting. He further criticizes Bernie Sanders, claiming that the senator no longer represents the outsider spirit he once stood for and has instead adapted to the political establishment he often speaks against. Brand views this as a disappointment to supporters who believed Sanders would challenge the system rather than fit into it, and he sees it as part of a wider issue involving leaders who drift away from the ideals that first earned them public trust.
Steal a line from Dave Chappelle, who said at some point how he doesn't know very much about what goes on Twitter because he doesn't go on Twitter because Twitter is not a real place. That's sort of how I feel about Twitter. And Twitter, not only is Twitter not a real place, but it's become a toxic cesspool filled with nothing, not about right, it's not about conservative, it's just filled with misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories. So I would rather not have the left replicate that if that's what's required. I think the deeper question that the question's getting at is that if you look at the data in this election, the amount of reach of all of these alternative, I'm talking about the whole podcast space mostly, but also social media, the interviews that Trump did, not starting with Rogan, but Theo Vaughn and all of the
Traditional journalism has become so sharply divided that many people now turn toward alternative media for information they feel is more balanced. In this climate, facts and fair reporting seem overshadowed by the push to advance political beliefs. Major networks often appear loyal to one side or the other, shaping their coverage to score political points rather than to inform viewers, leaving many everyday Americans feeling ignored and stuck in the middle of competing agendas. A number of journalists and commentators surround themselves with voices that simply echo their own views, shutting out differing opinions and making honest discussion rare, while inconvenient facts are pushed aside. This growing frustration has led more people to follow podcasts and independent creators, where they hope to find thoughtful, genuine, and less partisan conversations. It's not that Americans have stopped caring about truth, it's that they're losing trust in the sources meant to deliver it.
Refused to step aside and not run again. He was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance. And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up to fail. That was a 3-month campaign, and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so...
No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough? It was too long.
It was long enough.
It was long enough.
Russell Brand has been highly critical of mainstream media, arguing that networks like MSNBC have abandoned genuine journalism in favor of promoting political and corporate interests. He claims that instead of educating the public, major outlets shape stories to fit a particular agenda, using selective framing, sensationalism, and biased coverage to influence perception. Brand points to numerous examples, including the treatment of Joe Rogan, who was unfairly accused of taking veterinary medication despite having a legitimate prescription for human use. MSNBC and reporter Rachel Maddow allegedly exaggerated the story to discredit him after he criticized the network. Similarly, Brand highlights the perceived hypocrisy of Bernie Sanders, who, despite condemning wealth inequality, benefits from the political system he criticizes, owning multiple homes while working within the establishment he once opposed. According to Brand, these patterns demonstrate why millions of Americans are turning to independent media, such as podcasts, where a variety of viewpoints can be explored without the partisan slant of major networks. Traditional journalism, he argues, has become polarized, prioritizing ideology and narrative over facts, creating echo chambers that ignore diverse perspectives and obscure honest debate. Incidents like Kamala Harris being portrayed as a victim, despite holding one of the most powerful offices in the country, illustrate how narratives are manipulated to deflect responsibility and influence public opinion. Overall, Brand asserts that the erosion of trust in mainstream media is fueled by this consistent prioritization of political spectacle over truthful, impartial reporting, leaving viewers searching for authentic voices and open dialogue.
Not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and they didn't like them.
If they had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had,
That's
she would have been able to rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team. And so I wonder if that next Democratic person, maybe someone's not even on our radar yet, because frankly, when you look at the history of who's there's two types. The one who waited in line, who was next in line, and then there's the one who comes out. That's Obama. That's Clinton. That's Reagan to some extent.
We got a strong bench. There's a very strong bench. There's a number of people it could be possible.
The real question for the Democratic Party is which candidate will be strong and credible enough to compete for the presidency in 2028. Right now, the field seems limited. Figures like Zoran Mandani are already labeled as the Republican Party's socialist threat because their positions are viewed as too extreme to attract moderates. Gavin Newsom and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez face similar challenges, being seen as far-left symbols who are too polarizing to unify a divided party, while also being too progressive for moderate voters. Bernie Sanders, once seen as a voice of authenticity, now appears erratic to many and aligned with the system he once opposed. The Democrats are therefore in urgent need of fresh leadership. Someone capable of uniting the party without compromising principles and inspiring voters without alienating them. As 2028 approaches, that leader remains elusive, leaving the party uncertain about its identity and direction.
In a mass media age, that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody?
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what they.
No.
You have someone like Donald Trump has become a universally known, understood, loved by some, hated by others over the course of being omnipresent for 8 years.
Okay.
Barack Obama becomes president of the United States after running for 2 years as president, runs a 50-state primary, is on television, does dozens of Democratic debates, and by the time at the end of that, most people knew who.
As commentators like Russell Brand have repeatedly highlighted, mainstream news networks often skew narratives, push specific political agendas, and prioritize spectacle over substance. From the repeated misrepresentation of Joe Rogan's ivermectin prescription to the portrayal of Kamala Harris as a victim despite her 4 years as vice president, and even the shifting perception of Bernie Sanders from authentic outsider to establishment participant, these examples illustrate a broader pattern. the media is more focused on influence than on informing the public. Brand argues that networks like MSNBC and CNN often frame stories to fit a preferred narrative, selectively highlighting some details while downplaying or ignoring others, all in service of political or corporate interests. This approach can foster polarization, limit honest debate, and create echo chambers that reinforce existing beliefs rather than challenge them. Millions of Americans have begun seeking alternative voices who provide independent perspectives, like Joe Rogan and other podcasters. Unlike traditional networks, these independent platforms explore multiple viewpoints, encourage nuanced discussion, and resist the pressures of corporate or political influence. Audiences are increasingly drawn to these spaces because they value clarity, authenticity, and honest analysis over sensationalized reporting. Brand contends that this shift reflects a growing awareness that mainstream media often prioritizes storytelling that serves the powerful rather than the public. Ultimately, the public's increasing distrust of conventional news outlets underscores the need for journalism that is impartial, transparent, and committed to truth rather than political spectacle. Viewers want content that questions the status quo, exposes bias, and allows for open, fact-based discourse. As more people turn to independent media for insight, the influence of traditional networks continues to be scrutinized, highlighting the vital role of credible, authentic voices in shaping an informed society. To see more discussions like this one, click like.